I call this story my epiphanies. I'll explain in a moment why. First, I want to give you a little backstory. By the age of 6, I was picking fights regularly with people. It was cute and I got away with it for a long time. Now let's fast forward. At the age of 15, I started working a part-time job, and a pattern quickly began to emerge. Job after job after job, I had a difficult boss. Now, luckily for me, I have a very supportive family. And every time I would encounter one of these bosses, I'd call up my sister Pat. I'd say, Pat, you're not going to believe it. I've got a jerk for a boss. And this would happen over and over, and she'd say, wow, Amy, you've got the worst luck. All right, fast forward a few more years, I'm about 22. Same thing keeps happening, job after job, difficult boss. Once again, I call up my sister Pat. Pat, you're never going to believe it. Pat says, let me guess. A difficult boss? Yeah, I say, isn't that terrible? Very slowly and gently, Pat responds, Amy, honey, nobody has that kind of bad luck. At that moment, I realized I was bringing something to these relationships to cause the conflict. So, epiphany number 1, I was not just an innocent victim in these conflicts. I was also contributing to them. The problem was, I didn't know what I was doing wrong, and I didn't know how to fix it. Now, at the time, the predator-prey partner model that Pat eventually developed, it didn't exist yet. Luckily, I had a very high level of motivation to figure this all out. So, I took courses, I read books, I did therapy, and I tested out new behaviors. About 13 or so years later, I had my second epiphany. It was around 2001. I had just started my business the year before. And a colleague of mine, we'll call her Judy, invited me to a networking event. She said, Amy, it's tomorrow night, and it starts about 6 o'clock, and I'm going to get there at 6:30. And I said, okay, great. I'll probably get there at 6 o'clock, and I'll see you when you get there at 6:30. Well, the next day comes. I'm in the office, busy doing something, and I decide I'm going to finish this one last project. And I remember looking at my watch thinking, I'll just get there at 6:30 when Judy arrives. So I walk in, I see Judy, I say, hey, Judy, how are you doing? She comes up to me. She's got this panic in her voice. She said, Amy, I thought you were going to be here at 6 o'clock. I told Francine you were going to be here at 6 o'clock and you could spend the first half hour with her. And I said, who's Francine? And she explained, well, Francine, she's this 85-year-old woman who's not very comfortable in social situations, so I told her you could spend the first half hour with her. Now, at this point, I'm not feeling terribly guilty because I couldn't have known, and I'm not holding Judy responsible because she had good intentions. Well, she said nervously, well, come on in, I'll introduce you. And I said, okay, great. And as I walked into the room, I see this very statuesque woman of 85 with one of those big beehive hairdos, you know what I'm talking about? And a woman standing on either side of her, kind of like guards. This should have been my first clue. And as I went to introduce myself, she looks at me and she says in a rather attacking tone, I have been waiting for you for over half an hour. Where have you been? And my first thought was, girlfriend, you are messing with the wrong short person. And then my fantasy response really kicks in. Something like this. Sweetheart, if you haven't gotten your act together by the time you're your age, nothing I can do for you. Tempting, I know. And yet, I didn't want to be disrespectful to this woman who I didn't even know. And selfishly, I didn't want to damage my reputation in the French-speaking part of Switzerland before it had even been developed. So I'm thinking, well, what are my other choices here? And I imagined for a split second a prey response, which could have sounded something like this. Francine, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, and I promise I'll never do it again. Though, if you guys know me by now, you've been watching other things of my videos, you know my ego was never going to let me do that. And I was feeling stuck when in a split second I remembered something I had learned from improvisational theater. For the communication to be effective, the power dynamic needs to be equalized. And the way you equalize it is by showing respect for the other and for yourself simultaneously. So this is what I did. I said, okay, Amy, still body, direct eye contact, warm smile. And without any sarcasm in my voice, which I'm not quite sure how I managed, I said, Francine, if I'd known you'd been waiting for me, it would have been a pleasure to spend the time with you. It's nice to meet you. My friends, in that moment, Francine melted like an ice cream cone in Texas in August. And we had a delightful evening that event. I was shocked. It was all I could do in that moment not to look up to the heavens to see if the clouds were going to split and angels were going to start singing. Because I thought, how did I manage to do that? How did that happen? And then, Epiphany number 2. I realized because I was able to see this invisible power game, I chose to put my ego to the side. I resisted a predator or prey reaction. Instead, I made the choice of partner, and I got a very different outcome. Those are my insights for today. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to visit my website or check out my YouTube channel or my book, The Ego Tango, for more tips on becoming a more powerful communicator. Thanks for tuning in and happy partnering.